Hi there, guys, and welcome to this week's edition of the Wise Crypto Sunday Special with me, your host, Chris Coney. My guest today is a brand new guest. It's Joel Kruger. Joel, welcome to your first Sunday Special.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be here.
Is that right? Is it Kruger? Your
Yeah.
surname? Yeah, that's good. Okay, good. I'm always terrified of pronouncing people's surnames incorrectly, but got that
Yeah.
one. Yours is quite easy, actually.
Yeah. Phonetic.
Yes, indeed. So the topic we're going to be discussing today, I've called this episode NFT investing strategies, because I've done a couple of NFT episodes so far. I think both of them were with Maria, and she's quite detailed in her knowledge of the NFT space. But when I look back on those episodes, I actually do rewatch them sometimes, almost put my investor hat on and become the viewer and go, right, if I were watching this, what other things are missing? What else didn't they cover? And then I can go back and create that as another episode. And being more specific about okay, yes, how on earth do you get into the investing game with NFTs? So let's do what I normally do, which is start general to make sure everyone's on the same page and then dig into the details. So do you want to do a quick crack at what's an NFT, basically, in about 30 seconds?
Yeah. I would just keep it simple. And I would just say that an NFT is a an innovation that allows people to establish ownership of digital assets.
Mm-hmm.
So before an NFT, as an example, you can have a digital, some sort of a digital property. And most of us know that with digital properties, a lot of times you can just right click and copy them. And so there's this issue of how do you have ownership of a digital asset, right? And so the NFT, what it allows, the innovation that it presents is the ability for you to be able to assign ownership of a specific digital asset.
Mm-hmm. And it's an acronym, right? Non-fungible token.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, people talk about that, and when they talk about that, and I think with a lot of this stuff, it's where you want to focus, and so a lot of the focus goes to the definition. A non-fungible token, meaning that unlike a currency, like let's say a dollar, which if you have a dollar, I have a dollar. If you have a pound and I have a pound, it's the same, right? Fungible. With an NFT, it's non-fungible in the sense that each digital token has its own properties,
Exactly.
unique.
Yeah, you don't care which dollar is in your pocket. Whereas
Correct.
with an NFT, by definition, you do care which one it is because they are unique. They're not interchangeable for a variety of reasons, right? So that's what makes them unique, and they're complementary to the digital currencies, which are supposed to be fungible for the reasons for transacting. But when it comes to rarity, uniqueness, and having multiple traits, I've noticed is the thing with collectibles. All Bitcoins have the same traits. That's beautiful. But when you want to get it into the art realm, which is very unique and subjective, you need more uniqueness, because the more unique, the more rare, the more scarce, the more valuable in general. Anyway, so those are the principles there. So off the top of your head, then, can you list some of the categories that the NFT space falls into? Because we tend to kind of latch on to digital art, but that's sort of like the first era. And it's sort of evolving rapidly into different areas.
Yeah, I think there's just some sense to the way it's evolving.
Mm-hmm.
A natural use case is to say, let's assign value to this digital asset. A piece of art now can become its own unique individual piece of art, so that the issue of copies is no longer an issue, that somebody can claim ownership of something in a way where they can represent themselves as being the owner of that asset. And so the first example is with art, and I think that's an example that will live for many years to come. Tremendous breakthrough there. You think about digital artists, these are artists that arguably have just as much talent as traditional, physical artists. And yet up until only recently, they did not have the opportunity to be able to express themselves or take advantage of the economies around that art in the same way as these physical artists. And so now they can. So that would be a first easy example of an application of an NFT, similar to a collectible, a baseball card, no different, that I now have ownership of this this digital asset that's represented through art. The extension of that we're now kind of exploring, and there's many applications. There's a lot of talk around. You see right behind me, there's CryptoPunks, and the evolution of that is to say that there's these communities that can be built around these pieces of digital art. Maybe they're not art in the way that some would interpret art to be, but they are representations of art. But they also have this tribal aspect to them, which bring in a big important word here, which is utility, right? So there's the idea of owning a digital asset that also has the added layer of utility value add. And so that could be representing access. So if you own this token, this NFT, then you automatically are given access to whatever it is that is the idea behind whatever it is that's being created.
It could be anything, couldn't it? Digital. Anything.
Well, again, gaming is a big one. Applications within the metaverse. We're living a lot of our lives online, so there's these online worlds that are being created, so you can have assets within there and access to that. There's also using NFTs as access to real world events, right? So if you participate, or if you're a member, or if you have ownership in this asset, that you will then get access to things in the real world, and so the applications really we're just scratching the surface. There's many of them, but the innovation is quite sensible and compelling, in my opinion.
Absolutely. So I like that example, the physical access. And what shot into my mind at that time was a specific seat at a concert that's not fungible. If I've got the center front row, number 7 seat, right up to the barrier, that is non-fungible. That's the best seat in the house, you say. And it would be represented by an NFT, which is a digital ticket, effectively, that I could transfer ownership of, or, it has unique value because there's only one seat. I can only be sat there. No one else can be sat there at the same time. And there we go. That's a very simple idea that came to my mind, but that's not a limit. That's not this unlimited, how that could go.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's really comes down to, every day new innovations, new ideas are coming up around this technology, because at the end of the day, it is technology. It is something that is being built to make, things that we've been thinking about for a long time better, right? The economy around the internet is only just kind of getting started after the past, 20 years. We've had all this information, but we haven't figured out how to really use that in a way where the economics can be built in that are beneficial on a peer-to-peer basis. And so the introduction of blockchain, right, and smart contracts and NFTs are all kind of really pushing that forward in wonderful ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've read something this morning. Still only like 15% of retail sales are e-commerce, which is small. You think that's, e-commerce is huge, but it's still relatively small, even after, like you say, 20 years of mainstream internet usage. Crazy.
Yeah.
And then when you said about the digital artists finally getting, what do you call it, recognition for their skill, the same as physical artists, and I wrote down, well, it's just the tools that have changed. That ability to create an original artwork in your mind and then manifest it as a image, whether that's on a canvas or a Photoshop, that skill is the same, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's really no different than looking at different forms of art, right? As we've come up through the years, that, a new form of art comes in, and it's automatically, there's this unsettling period, perhaps some rejection, but it's no different, right? Like you said, that these digital artists have arguably the same talents as these other artists, and so now they have the opportunity. Up until recently, they're contracting work for, based on somebody taking a commission for some work for maybe a company or whatever it is, a project, but there's no way to really express themselves in the way that they want to express themselves, and then to put that up on display at a gallery and have that kind of sold off. And now, well, it's there. Actually, I've said this quite a bit. You talk about the playing field being leveled now that this is there, but it really isn't. It's more than leveled, in the sense that now you have an incredible thing for digital artists, in the sense that the technology allows for this digital art to retain its rarity, its scarcity, by assigning a specific copy of this image, right, as its own kind of digital asset. But at the same time, we welcome the idea that this asset should go viral as far as being shared across the internet. The more it's shared, the more people see it. It's wonderful. And yet at the same time, there still is this scarcity, this rarity, because if you don't own the smart contract, the NFT that is linked to your specific wallet, then you don't have any rights to sell that piece of art. And so it's an amazing thing to be able to have something go viral and be rare at the same time. Quite confounding.
It's like an authorized copy by the artist, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's even better than having it signed. It's like them pointing to specific instances and saying these are the authentic ones. Right?
Yeah. What's even cooler than that is that the collector really does become a part of the provenance, a part of the art with the technology. Because when you look at a piece of art now on the blockchain, right, you see the piece of art, and then below it you have this amazing provenance that lists, right? Yeah, it lists the artist, it lists who the owner is, it lists all the previous owner. Right. So you see this whole secondary market. You see where the transfers have gone. So not only can you track it, but you can track it in ways where there's value add, in the sense that if I recognize or appreciate an artist early on, and that artist later goes on to become, widely popular, and their art starts to sell for much higher values. Well, there's a record of me as someone who was there early that recognized the value in this artist, and then I become, as a collector, an asset, because I'm able to kind of, and then people can look to someone like myself or whoever the collector is and say, well, they kind of are able to anticipate. The same way I would say, if you look at the Bitcoin white paper, right? And you read the Bitcoin white paper, fascinating. And I get chills when I read the Bitcoin white paper, because the history is so close, right? Most of the times we study history, we're disconnected from it because it's hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. But here there was this major change that happened through Bitcoin, right? And this mystery around it, the intrigue around it. We don't know who Satoshi is. But if you look at the people that interacted at the time the white paper was released, they're still living today. And so my point is, you go look at those people and see what they're doing. Those people were recognizing something pretty valuable very early on. And if you go and look and see what they're doing today, maybe that taps in, and maybe it serves as there's some value add in kind of seeing what they're thinking about going forward from here. Cool. So
if they've got that eye, that gets onto what you were talking about, economies that are created around this NFT industry. And I would call that person a curator, right? You might not be a collector. This is like a whole new class of profession. You can monetize that eye, like being a talent spotter. If you got that eye and you're just someone anywhere with an internet connection, all you need is that eye, and you go, that's the next biggest artist. And you start buying up their NFTs at $5 a go. And then when they get discovered by the masses, boom, there's your payoff. And there's no middleman, there's just your eye and the artist.
Yeah, that definitely is something that can happen, and we do see does happen. There are some dangers associated with that, if there's not the integrity behind it. But ultimately, things should kind of work out the way that you want them to over time. And yeah, it's a very powerful thing.
What do you mean there, the integrity? I didn't catch that bit.
Well, there are some projects where you see these ideas of groups kind of that establish reputations early on for something, and then they kind of start to push things that maybe not necessarily of value. But yet a lot of people see that and they're right there because of the FOMO. And then, those projects end up failing perhaps, but then the truth rises to the surface not too long after. But so the model works. But yes, it is very powerful.
That sounds like if someone was to start to abuse the trust and reputation they'd built up in the industry, say.
Which would be counterproductive if they had an expectation to sustain themselves within the industry. Right?
Yeah, that's short-term thinking. Absolutely, never works in investing anyway.
The thing is though, that short-term thinking in such a fast world,
that's a good point.
Can be profitable, right? So that's the trick. So you have to be savvy. If you're in it, you have to watch. But again, it's not exclusive to this industry and this space. It's any space that comes up where it's a bit of a wild west, and these are the things that happen. It's not exclusive to this. This is not uncommon. The fact that it's so widely adopted and so widely thought so highly of, makes it scale that much greater. You're attracting some very bright minds from around the world, right? It's so that you're looking at things, are a little bit, the stakes are a little bit higher, but it's no different than any other innovation that we've seen.
Sure. How do we explain the amount that's been invested, though? I wrote down the question: is it simply the accessibility of NFTs, that anyone technically with an Ethereum smartphone wallet can get in the game? Is it simply access that's causing the surge, or is it something else?
Well, I think that the access is certainly a draw. I mean, it's kind of ironic that you would suggest that, because a lot of the critique of the space thus far is the inability to access, that it hasn't been easy to access. But the truth is, it is quite easy once you get the hang of it. And the idea that I don't have to, again, travel to the other side of the world to go look at a physical piece of art, that I can now access something in its optimal form right here and now, and I can click a button and take ownership of that. Certainly, that helps the cause. I think it's the kind of the fact that we've had something sitting for so long. Again, when we go back to talking about the internet, and over the past 20 years, we have this understanding of what this is. And so once you kind of understand how big it is, which we all understand now, right? And then you introduce an innovation, a technology that is able to kind of monetize that, right, and create an economy around it. Well, everybody already knows how scalable this is, so it becomes almost a no-brainer to be able to kind of invest time and energy into the space. So I think that the other big point I would make about all of this that I think is also critical is that up until really this year, I would say for the most part, as if we're talking about on a relative basis, what's mainstream versus what's not, but let's call this year more mainstream. Up until this year, most of the innovation around cryptocurrency and blockchain technology is very back-end focused, right? Very not relatable to the average person.
Mostly infrastructure, stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's the way it needs to be, right? But people aren't necessarily understanding, currencies and all of that. They don't really, that isn't something that they can relate to. But all of a sudden, 2021 hits, right? And you have decentralized finance, right? The first portion of 2021 with a lot of institutional adoption. And then you have all of a sudden, okay, now we're talking about digital art. Well, it's the first thing that people can say, really, wow, I get this, right? I get this. This is what cryptocurrency is about, right? This is what blockchain technology is about. I understand art. I understand what looks nice and what I want. So I'm all in, right? Because I can see that this has been successful, but I really haven't. I've been on the sidelines because I haven't really connected with it. Now I see something that I connect with that is an on-ramp to exposure to cryptocurrency, right? Because I can't have exposure to the space of NFTs and digital art without having exposure to cryptocurrency. And I'm a lot more comfortable because now I feel like I get it a little bit. So I think that also has a lot to do with it.
That's a good one. That is a good one. That is a very good one. Yeah. The digital assets in the first era just seem like overly complex, and then you have to get into a lot of data and math to figure out the values and be like, it's not very engaging, is it? That's the other thing. The art world is both intellectually and emotionally engaging. It's just more fun at the end of the day. So that's got a lot to do with it, I imagine.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. When cryptocurrencies come up and blockchain comes up, again, quite often the first step towards innovation is always going to the money, right? So that has to be, because that's where things kind of get going the fastest. But the idea has always been, I believe, right, that there's these, many applications beyond, right, the currency to this decentralized technology. And so we're dipping into that now, which is great. We're finally starting to see that. There were many years, I'd say between 2013 to 2016, 17, 18 even, where, there's a lot of frustration about kind of, now we got to start getting that front end stuff out. And so it's been very exciting to see that, kind of break through this year.
Absolutely. So I'd say that the NFT space is deserving of the hype. So I looked up the statistic. In the first half of 2021 alone, NFT sales reached $2.5 billion, which is like, Jesus, that is huge. So
I think
comment on
it's
that, Edwin.
it's definitely huge and it's impressive. But I think that when you look at the potential, right, of what we have on the internet and the potential and the scope and the scalability of the entire totality of everything, we're just scratching the surface. I mean, that's nothing. So it's a tremendous success because we've seen this growth. But again, I think most people don't really have exposure to this or know what we're doing here.
Right.
And we don't even know how far this is going to go. So so it's great, very exciting, very encouraging, but still, when the conversation comes up around a bubble, certainly there are going to be periods of pullback without exception. That's the nature of the beast. That's the way that we work as human beings. That's the way that psychology goes. And so there are going to be pullbacks, but a bubble, I wouldn't be so sure to call it a bubble. I would rather just, see we're going to probably have a nice period of correction. There's a lot of crap that comes along in these initial waves of success. And so people jump on, but these are necessary moves towards ultimately a more constructive, higher outlook. So I would kind of step away from calling it a bubble. I don't think that that's the case.
Sure, absolutely. So someone sees those numbers and is like, okay, there's clearly money to be made here. How on earth do I make money out of the NFT space? I suppose there's only three logical answers to that, which are, well, create and sell your own NFTs, buy and sell other people's NFTs, or build a platform that allows people to trade NFTs. In my mind, that's it. Those are the only three options. What do you think?
As far as the only three options, as far as what, how do you
like
use
if I was
NFT?
an investor and I'm like, how do I actually make money with NFTs? Those are my sort of three options.
Yeah, I mean, if you are interested in making money with NFTs, you can create them, you can invest in them, and you can invest in applications that are built around them, right? So those would be, as far I think it's pretty basic that those should be the ways that you need to take on exposure to NFTs. So you can do it as a creator or as an investor.
Or as a collector, curator, whatever you want to call those people, right?
Yeah.
The problem is, though, that there's so many. I mean, I wrote down here, if it was, it's bad enough figuring out which one of the 11,000 there are now 11,000 crypto assets. If you go to CoinMarketCap, there are 11,000 of them available. So it's hard enough figuring out which one of those set to invest in. But NFTs take it one step further in terms of complexity, because when you see these NFT collections released, there are often many thousands in each collection. But I looked at this one, Doja Cat, which is this music artist, is releasing this 2-tier system of NFTs with 26,000 collectibles. So that's not copies, that's different versions. So what's an investor to do? How do you navigate this massive minefield of chaos?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that, NFTs are not some magic solution to everything. Just because you have it doesn't mean that everything's going to work. What it does mean is that there's a tool for people that do have something to add to be able to take advantage of. So again, there's going to be a lot of froth. That's the first thing I would say. As far as, extrapolating, beyond based on what you just said, I would say that, when it comes to looking at these things, you made the comparison between cryptocurrencies. So we're talking about looking at, let's just keep it to Bitcoin and ETH versus these, we'll call it in the context of the way that you were asking it, these pieces of digital art effectively. So whereas with Bitcoin and ETH, the fundamentals are more aligned with the analysis that would be required to look at models, basic economic models of kind of being able to assign a valuation, right? Here, it becomes a lot more subjective because we are talking about art. And so to that end, I would say that it's very important to be able to, first and foremost, know what it is that this space represents. So if you're looking at a piece of digital art without the utility or anything like that, then you're looking at art. And so you should come at it the same way that you would come at looking at any piece of art. And so therefore, if you're going to be in this and you're going to be serious about it, and you want to make money in it, well, if we're talking about art, then you have to love it, right? You have to love what you're going to be looking at. And so I think that that's very important, because at a minimum, I like to think of these things just like you would look at a trade in the markets. You don't know if the trade's going to go well. You don't know if a trade's going to go well, but all you can do is put all the effort and work into taking a position in the market, and know that once you take the position, that you're left with no regret, because it might not work out, right? Not all trades are going to work out. But if you do that, then when it doesn't work out, you're left with a lot of outside value add, knowing that you were disciplined, that you waited, you understood that not everything's going to go your way, but you kind of change the way that people are expected to react when it comes to markets, right? They're not very good about that. The same thing with the art. The way I look at it is that it's an even better example, arguably, because I'm looking at a piece of art, something that inspires me, something that I'm going to come home to every day, that I'm going to look at, that's going to give me value add beyond the monetary value add. So I know that this is going to add value. That's kind of the first thing, if I'm looking at it as a potential investor. The other things that you have to think about are, who is the artist that you're investing in? Do you feel that this is an artist that's here for, a day, a week, or is this an artist that was there before this all started and that's going to be there well after? You want to look at what it is that the artist is doing, right? If you're looking at a project like the one that you said, how innovative is that project, right? How likely is it that somebody else could come along and do a similar project, right? What are they doing that's kind of maybe changing the game a little bit, right? So there's a lot of different components that come into this that are required, I believe, to be able to potentially have a good opportunity to be able to be profitable, which I think there's a lot of opportunity, but you have to be smart about it. You can't just jump on things without having a kind of checklist of things that you need to look at to be able to hopefully also benefit financially from these things.
Yeah, otherwise you're just gambling, right? And that actually made me think. You described it very similarly to the way one would trade financial assets. We would say, oh, that's a good looking trade, because the setup is what matters. The certain criteria for entering a trade must be satisfied. And actually it doesn't matter whether it, in the long run it does, but in the short term it doesn't really matter whether it wins or loses. What matters is that you tick off all the rules for a trade. And as long as it meets that criteria, that's considered a good trade, whether it makes money or not. So you just rattled off a little list there of a similar strategy, and I call that a strategy, for low risk NFT investments. You got to love it. Look at the artist. What's the art,
Yeah, I know. And going back to the trading a little bit, because I do come from that background, I've always said that if you want to be successful as a trader, there's a rule that I implemented years ago, which sounds kind of wishy-washy and cheesy a little bit, but it's a way to kind of build in some quantitative metrics to your trading without having to even have any knowledge of the quantitative risk management, which is, do I love this trade, right? Like, do I love this trade? Because there's not going to be a day that goes by. There's not going to be a minute or an hour that goes by where you don't sit down and say, I like this trade, right? We're always going to be able to, especially now that we have access to clicking a button to be able to execute a trade, there's never going to be a moment where you don't say to yourself, I like this. But if you do that, you're going to be taking a lot of trades. And what's going to end up happening is when it doesn't work out, you're going to snowball, because you're going to end up saying, why did I take that? I didn't love it. I liked it, right? And so by putting that in your head, do I love this? It automatically kind of reduces significantly the amount of positions you're going to be taking. And it leaves you in a place where you're going to be feeling good about the decision making and the process, which most people can't get behind. So it's the same thing. I try to apply that to this, right? Which is there's going to be a lot of projects, especially now with everything coming out right now, and you can't even keep up. No. So you have to be able to kind of find a way to be able to say, okay, I can't get caught up in everything. I don't have the bankroll for it, or I don't have the bandwidth for it. So I'm just going to look at things that just hit me in the face so hard in a good way that I can't turn away from,
That's good. I like that. Reducing the frequency of your trades, whether that be in traditional investing, crypto asset investing, or the NFT thing, like preserve your capital for those, do I love this trade opportunities? I like that a lot.
And again, I'm actually putting out a piece about this, and it is very similar to financial markets. And there are lessons to be learned right now that are only being learned right now. So, for example, I come from a market that was considered to be very forward in terms of the access of the currency market, right? 24 hours, always having access to it. And the more you have access to a market, right, the more potential there is for downfall with the more I'm going to say, I like this trade, I like this trade, I like this trade, and you're going to be in up shit's creek. And so we're in a place right now where the world is moving very fast. Now we're into cryptocurrencies where not only is it 24/5, it's 24/7. So there's no stop. And that means that there's just more happening. And so the importance of reducing that frequency is that much more essential, in my opinion, to being successful, whether it's taking risk on the financial market side or in the NFT space.
Sure. That's the thing. More activity, there's more opportunities. So accept the fact that you're always going to be missing out purely because there's so many opportunities. Like, get comfortable with that. Don't worry about it. There's always another trade.
There's always going to be another trade.
Exactly.
There's always going to be another NFT.
That's the beautiful thing. Right. So this whole space, the NFT thing, this has got to the point where, like we just said, the complexity and so on, it's just a research minefield. So it's got to the point where investors really need some extra help in this area. So you are heading up, I believe, at Weiss Ratings, a new research service that's dedicated to NFTs. Is that right?
That's correct. Right. So that's exactly what is going to be happening. And again, I come from a strategy side, from the financial market side. And because of the fact that I was and continue to be a currency trader, and because I was on social media at a very early time, I was introduced to Bitcoin very early. I was on a peer-to-peer social network, and I was a currency trader. So I was right at the center of everything. And so it kind of fell into my lap. That gave me a lot of time to kind of be there well ahead of when the added applications that came mostly, right, predominantly with the Ethereum blockchain, to be there, to be able to jump in and to be excited about kind of recognizing all these applications. So I've been there. I entered the space purely for my own interests because it was all just happening. I absolutely love it. And there's certainly a lot of opportunity and I believe money to be made in this space. And the other interesting thing about it, and I have to go back and say, I absolutely love it, right? I love art, and I love looking at this, and I love the cross section of art and culture and technology. It's just so exciting to be a part of this. And how can I not? Currency trading becomes rather boring. And what is so funny about that is that currencies had always been exciting, but unfortunately, since 2008, since the Fed basically hijacked financial markets, not basically, but did, things have become very flat. Volatility has been exceptionally low. And so you don't have that same excitement around the things that made those markets so exciting, right? And so here is a new market that's an offshoot, an extension, and where you can take these kind of the skill set and you can look at something that's really exciting that has other things layered in that are things that you're passionate about in your non-professional life. How can you not kind of be excited about wanting to be involved? So yeah, the idea is to create a product around this new exciting space and to come at it with that experience from the traditional side, and then to look and try to find value and opportunities as they come.
Exactly. I think that's what the viewers are probably looking for. So where's this at? It's going to be in newsletter format. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what about, is it how?
Weekly.
Weekly? Has that been decided?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it have a name, this service?
No, we're still trying to work out the final details on all that and the launch date. But hopefully over the coming weeks, we'll have something.
Oh, okay, cool. And what's going to be in these newsletters exactly?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
What's going to be in these newsletters?
So it's basically going to be my analysis of the week, keeping up with the market and all of the things that are coming in the pipeline, and staying on top of it, so that again, as we said earlier, it's just there's a lot coming through. You can barely keep up. And so, I've been in it since the beginning. I think I have a good eye for being able to recognize what might be significant and what isn't. And so I'm kind of here to sift through it all and to find the things that I find compelling. And hopefully those things will translate to the viewers, the readers, the subscribers, also kind of being able to be interested and find these ideas compelling and to be able to take advantage of them.
Sure. There's actually a little distinction I'd like you to make there. So say take an existing collection like Bored Apes. They're already out there in the market trading, right? So you could trade them like any other asset. They'll have eventually a candlestick chart of, the historical price and all that kind of stuff, right? But they already exist. So that's one way of investing in them. But what about what do you call them? The origin event, the minting event, the drop. What do you call that when their collection is first created and sold? I've just listed 3 ways that people talk about those. They call it like the minting or the drop or whatever, the issuance.
The minting of the new collection. Yeah.
So are you going to be keeping your eye out when you say this then, you're going to keep an eye on what's coming?
Yeah, I mean, as an example, let's say that we're at a time right now where, we could be on the verge of seeing a bit of a correction within the space. So that correction could be used as an opportunity to find real value in existing pieces of art or existing projects, right? Avatar projects. So there's that side of it. It also could be that there's a new project coming out that's super interesting that I think that is worth, dipping into and taking on some exposure to. So it's not exclusive to new projects or existing projects, just about where I think that there's value, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, it comes down to, again, like anything with investing, there's price and there's value. And for the most part, price and value are kind of interlinked. They're the same, but that doesn't make for an exciting market. What makes for an exciting market is the volatility that comes, which is the disconnect between price and value, which is what we're looking for. We're looking for disconnect between price and value. That could be at the inception of a project, the minting of a project, where it's very early on, where you recognize value and there's a tremendous disconnect between what the price is and where the value should be. Mm-hmm. Or it could be into a correction where the market's dropped too heavily. And we think that there's opportunity to be able to kind of take advantage of this disconnect between price and value before it comes back together, hopefully in our favor.
That was beautiful. That sounds exciting. So, Joel, that's great. I think we'll leave it there for today. So thank you very much for being on the Wise Crypto Sunday special.
My pleasure, Chris. Really nice to meet you.
Thank you. Okay, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Wise Crypto Sunday special with me, your host, Chris Coney. Until the next one, it's bye for now.